So I automatically begin to wonder, like when you see the scale of the devastation to the port, that the port looks destroyed. It looks like it, is back to almost nothing. How do you recover from this? As you said, hundreds of buildings destroyed. I saw quotes from people saying that the damage to the buildings is beyond anything they've seen in the wars over the past few years. Are people really even thinking about recovery yet, or are they still just responding in shock to what happened yesterday?
People are out in the streets today, taking stock. Small mom and pop businesses. So many small businesses in Lebanon. It's a country full of little mom and pop stores. Everything is kind of family owned for the most part in this country. And so you had this hundreds of shops, lots of like cool bars and nice places to eat. And it was like the trendy part of town, bohemian part of town, and also just like the regular working class part of town, all mixed in. It's all mixed in Lebanon. The high rises and the little old 100-year-old buildings. And you really just see these people and they say, who's gonna help us? Who's gonna help us rebuild our lives? These are working class people who invested their whole life in their little small convenience store. And their house was like above. So they lost their house and they lost their business, and they're already bankrupt and broke. And everybody's already bankrupt and broke in Lebanon because the government's broke. We're undergoing. We were in an economic collapse. We were in a catastrophe, and then this hit us. So there's no FEMA in Lebanon. Mm-hmm. There's no big institutions that are 100 years old that can help you do things. Big government help. There's none of that because the government can't even put the lights on in this country. We sit in the dark 16 hours a day in the dark. We live on generators. It's like how much worse can it get? You start to think. I think it's important people understand the economic context. We have a currency crisis. We're in hyperinflation. That means the currency has lost 80% of its value. That means whatever money you have in your pocket, whatever money you have in the bank, whatever money you make monthly as a salary, slash it by 80%, and then try to go and feed your family. This is all before. Jobs have been slashed. The hospitals that are treating patients have just fired 800 employees a few weeks ago because the combination of the pandemic and this currency devaluation has driven them out of business. Hospitals can't pay their bills. Hospitals can't really afford medicine because people can't afford hospitals. The government owes hospitals so much money they can't pay it back. So I mean, how is the government going to help all these people? Who's going to help these people? There was a homeless person. There was a homeless person who was interviewed, and he said, "Look at this. I can't even sleep on the street anymore. There's no street to sleep on. The street was full of rubble. All the cars were full of rubble. People are trying to, take apart things. Few people that can afford it, but most of the things are just sitting there, broken, damaged. Hundreds of stores, hundreds of shops, thousands of apartments, blown out. My friends sending me pictures of their apartments. Pieces of glass fly through the apartment like knives, stabbing their furniture. Some of them were lucky not to be home. Them and their kids, they could have gone. You see all these videos, people filming it. They're filming the fire, like you said, and they're thinking they're kind of like, they're not taking it serious. It's a fire. Look how they're going to put it out. And then you see people just, boom, the camera flies. The camera's gone. Yeah. You don't know if they survived. You don't know if the video you're watching is somebody who died, who filmed that. So there's just so much trauma going on and so little help.
Yeah. So as you talked about, the context prior to the bomb was disastrous in a number of different ways. The description I've read of what caused the explosion, the fact that all of that material had been sitting there for something like 6 years at this point, that there had been warnings even recently. Some official had said, if this explodes, it will take out the city effectively. Will that lead to any change in government? Will people, I mean, the fact that this is hypothetically something that could have been avoided, that it wasn't, a different sort of tragedy, an attack or something like that, but hypothetically that this did not have to happen at all. Is that something that people are thinking about? Do you think that it's likely to lead to anything politically happening?
Look, people are extremely angry. They feel betrayed. They feel they've been betrayed. I mean, their whole life. This, as I said, this is not the first tragedy. It's a huge tragedy. A lot of people have died, but people have been dying in Lebanon for decades and years because they can't afford healthcare, because they can't. Their diseases, the air is polluted, the water is polluted. The garbage piling up on the streets, all kinds of chemicals, and the food that we eat. There are all kind of food scandals. Every once in a while. So people, every scandal and every major thing makes people angry. Obviously, this is like a tectonic boom compared to the other things that we've experienced because just of the physicality of it, the visceral nature of it. But political systems, I think we underestimate them, and they're very well entrenched. And those politicians have been there for a long time, and they spent a lot of effort getting there. And they don't just go away. And when people see events and tragedies, they tend to believe the story that makes them feel comfortable, that they've been raised to believe, what their fathers believed, and so people will automatically read this story in different ways. Some will say, "I heard a plane. It's the Israelis. It was a missile." Others will say it's Hezbollah. They're bringing in arms from Iran. We don't have any evidence either way, but people already started sharing the story and tweeting it that way. Some of the influential people, journalists, some of them, they take positions very, very quickly. The revolutionaries of Beirut, they've been very brave. They've fought 8 or 9 months in the streets trying to remove the government. It hasn't really happened. We did have a resignation of the prime minister. However, the new prime minister is seen as not a huge improvement, although he's kind of an outsider. People wanted more. A lot of the government ministers were not really that far from the previous regime and the parties that run the country. Lebanon's a country run by militias. It's not really a state. It's like a militias competing to run a country, and they don't work together. There's no teamwork. There's no team spirit. They treat it like they're still in the war. And these are the same individuals who led tank battalions through the streets and neighborhoods of Beirut, blasting each other and blasting this whole country. They're the ones that are in charge to this day. And they have their followers, and they have their loyalists, and there's a reason behind that. These people stood by them in the war. They defended their neighborhoods. They believe in them, whether it's true or not. To think that we can just uproot all of that because we're angry. I don't know. I mean, I really hope that we see a change in this country, but we've been fighting for it for months and years. And let's not forget, the militia leaders themselves thought they were revolutionaries. They didn't come from money, a lot of them. They fought a ruling class, a landowning class in their day, back in the 70s and the 60s. So I think it's a very complicated thing to talk about political change. I don't think it happens without blood, if it's going to be a real change and a really restart a system. But imagine that in any system. Can you just wipe away political parties? You can't just wipe away political parties, even though there's some people who are maybe ultra liberal and say, hey, I don't like any of the parties, but a lot of people say, hey, I do like these parties. Yeah. So that's what we have in Lebanon. It's a kind of partisanship. It's a deep rooted, it's a partisanship that's kind of combined with war experience and fighting experience. So imagine the Republican Democratic parties were militias during the Civil War. So it's so complicated that it's really hard, I think, to untangle and undo that. But there is a new political force in the country that has been emerging over these months and years, not just recently, but it's been building for years. And I've followed that, and I've been part of that. And they've achieved many small victories, rejecting laws, fighting government projects, trying to save environment, trying to fight destructive dam projects, World Bank projects, that kind of thing. And they've made some progress in many cases when it was really specific and targeted towards something. But just to say, I want to remove the entire political system, that's when less people will be involved. And so the protests really shrank from big numbers, just demanding change and frustration, to smaller numbers getting more violent, doing more rioting and that kind of thing. Which 100% people have a need to vent this anger of living in this country. But I think just because a country is really performing badly economically and doesn't really work, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a conspiracy against you. You know, I think that people have to realize that, you know, the global economy is unforgiving to small countries that make nothing. And we're a tiny country with no manufacturing, probably because we're always at war. You know, we're a country always at war. So how do you build an industry? How do you compete in the global economy? How do you make money? We don't make any money. That's the problem with Lebanon. We're constantly in debt. And the political forces in this country, the militias, nobody wins. They all keep going at each other, and they don't lose because they're constantly propped up by the big rich countries: America, Iran, Saudi Arabia, France. They have been, all of Lebanon's history, constantly supporting these rival militias. So Lebanon's like a joint venture between local warlords and, you know, big countries that have an agenda to pursue. And it's like we're like a chessboard, you know, where these moves are made between the world. So that also makes it so hard for this country to come together and fix things. And, you know, because you need a clear chain of command to run a country. There is no chain of command in Lebanon. There's all these competing groups, and it's never really clear who's in charge of this country. And that's why I think this tragedy, we don't have to read it as some kind of conspiracy or something, because when you have a system like that, there's no regulations, there's no regulatory bodies, there's no oversight, there's no transparency, there's no accountability, the courts don't work. And so then you have, how can you expect safety measures to be taken with hazardous materials? I mean, I think we're just an accident waiting to happen in this country. You know, you don't need a terrorist to come and mess up a country. You have a lot of dangerous things in your country: gasoline, flammable things, dangerous bridges, all that stuff that could go wrong if it's not properly managed and maintained. And nothing is maintained in Lebanon. We don't even have electricity. We don't even have traffic lights. All of the traffic lights are not working in Beirut right now because the government can't pay the bill to maintain them. So you could just die on the highway in Lebanon every day. There's no highway patrol. There's no police. You could drive however you want in this country. People die every day on the highways. So, you know, we don't have potable water. We don't have sewage. You know, all of our sewage gets pumped into the Mediterranean. You know, so it's not surprising to me that something like this could happen in this country. You know.
Yeah, no, and I really do appreciate. I mean, you describe it as complicated, and obviously it very much is a tragedy in a place that was already experiencing so many others, and because of that, and because you can provide so much of the historical background, we really do appreciate you joining us and giving us information. This is not, you know, this is not a part of the world that a lot of Americans have much information about, and so we really do appreciate you joining us and sharing your experience.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.